Modern marriage, often romanticized as a sacred union, has evolved into a complex and deeply psychological system that demands an honest re-evaluation, especially for men. Beneath the surface of partnership and love, there lies a strategic framework that subtly transforms men into willing participants in their own domestication. What begins as a pursuit of companionship and family often morphs into a quiet surrender of identity, freedom, and psychological autonomy. The slow erosion of male independence for many men, the transition into marriage marks the beginning of a systematic dismantling of their independent life. Friend groups shrink or vanish, hobbies are deemed selfish unless they align with family interests, and personal income becomes our money, often managed by the wife. Free time, once available for self-directed pursuits, gets consumed by family obligations. This isn't accidental, it's structural. Women, consciously or not, understand that a man's value to the relationship increases when his external options decrease. The fewer alternatives a man has, the more invested he becomes in maintaining the relationship, even at the cost of personal sacrifice. Piece by piece, a man's independence is stripped away. What makes this system particularly effective is how it weaponizes his most noble values: being a good husband, a devoted father, a reliable provider. These virtues, while admirable, become the very chains that bind him to a role that prioritizes duty over desire. Resistance feels selfish. Compliance becomes virtue. The psychological reprogramming of men cultural narratives like happy wife, happy life aren't just quaint sayings, they're psychological conditioning. They program men to prioritize their partner's emotional well-being above their own, creating a power imbalance where one person's happiness becomes paramount, and the other's is merely conditional. In this dynamic, the husband's role becomes that of a problem solver, emotional buffer, and financial provider, not a fully realized individual. Philosophers like Carl Jung and Schopenhauer warned of the loss of identity that comes from total immersion in roles others define for you. In marriage, many men slowly shape-shift into what their wives need, rather than who they truly are. Each small compromise, skipping a guy's night, avoiding conflict by agreeing to her preferences, deferring to her decisions, seems harmless. But collectively, they lead to a complete surrender of selfhood. Biological programming versus romantic ideals. A stark truth often overlooked is that love in marriage is conditional, especially from the female perspective. It's rooted in utility. When a man can no longer provide value, be it financial, emotional, or practical, his worth is reassessed. This explains why women initiate the majority of divorces. It's rarely about unhappiness, it's about optimization. Once the value extracted from the marriage plateaus or better alternatives appear, the emotional bond begins to fade. Marriage courts further enforce this structure by ensuring men remain financially tethered post-divorce through alimony and child support. Even separation doesn't release them from the obligations they took on, reinforcing the idea that marriage is less about love and more about resource management. The trap of learned helplessness. The cumulative effect of these dynamics leads to a psychological state known as learned helplessness. Men stop asserting their needs because experience has taught them that resistance leads to emotional conflict. Over time, they stop trying altogether. Many even defend the very system that drains them, mistaking sacrifice for love and self-neglect for virtue. This is what some refer to as domestic Stockholm syndrome, identifying with one's captor and believing the prison is a palace. Society, religion, media, and even other men reinforce this programming. The man who questions it is labeled immature or selfish. The system cannot tolerate scrutiny, so it cloaks itself in moral obligation and social prestige. The path to psychological sovereignty. What's the solution? A strategic mindset. Men must stop viewing marriage as an emotional sanctuary and start seeing it as a contract, evaluated like any other. What are the costs? What are the benefits? Is the trade fair? Men must also confront an uncomfortable truth. Women's conscious desires often conflict with their unconscious programming. They may say they want sensitive, emotionally available men, but are drawn to those who maintain independence, boundaries, and purpose. Nice guys finish last not because they're kind, but because they signal low status, desperation, and a lack of options. The man who thrives in relationships is one who doesn't need them. He has a life so full of purpose that companionship becomes optional, not necessary. His value lies in his independence, not his compliance. He doesn't sacrifice himself hoping for gratitude or loyalty. He offers love from a place of abundance, not need. Redefining love, freedom, and connection. True love doesn't demand self-erasure. It enhances, rather than consumes. It celebrates individuality rather than demanding conformity. Most marriages fail to reach this level because they're built on dependency, not mutual growth. But the man who achieves psychological sovereignty can enter or reject marriage without fear, because he is already complete. This journey isn't easy. It requires strength, self-awareness, and a willingness to stand alone. But the reward is profound. The ability to engage in relationships from a position of strength, not weakness. Not because you need someone to complete you, but because you have something real to offer. In a world where men are trained to give themselves away, the greatest rebellion is to remain whole.